The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier in a crisp suit who made me sign 3 different forms before handing over the thick manila envelope. I stood in the doorway of my studio apartment, still in my pajamas, coffee growing cold on the counter behind me, and stared at the return address, Rothman and Associates, estate attorneys. My name is Emma Clark. I'm 28 years old, and until that moment, I believed my story was simple, sad, and long since settled. I was abandoned as an infant outside St. Mary's Hospital in Boston, wrapped in a yellow blanket with nothing but a note that said, "Please take care of her. I can't." The nurses named me Emma because one of them had a daughter with that name. Clark came from the social worker who processed my case. I grew up in foster care, bouncing between 6 different homes before aging out of the system at 18. I made peace with it, or at least I thought I had. According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. I put myself through community college working 3 jobs, earned my associate's degree in graphic design, and built a modest freelance career. I had friends, a tiny apartment in Dorchester that I could almost afford, and a life that was mine. I didn't spend my nights wondering about the woman who left me on those hospital steps. What was the point? But this letter was about to destroy that carefully constructed peace. I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The letterhead was embossed, expensive. The language was formal, full of whereases and heretofores. But certain phrases leaped out at me like accusations. Estate of Margaret Eleanor Ashford, biological daughter, Emma Jane Ashford, born March 15th, 1997, DNA confirmation required, estimated value of $3.4 million. I had to read it 3 times before the words made sense, 4 times before I could breathe properly. Someone named Margaret Eleanor Ashford had died, and her attorney claimed I was her biological daughter, that I was entitled to her entire estate. The woman who abandoned me was dead, and she left me millions. My first call was to the attorney, James Rothman. His secretary scheduled me for the following day. My second call was to my best friend Riley, who rushed over with wine and helped me spiral into every emotion simultaneously: rage, grief, confusion, and something that felt dangerously like hope. "Maybe she had a reason," Riley said gently, perched on my secondhand couch. "Maybe she was young, or in trouble, or—" "She left me on the steps of a hospital," I cut her off. "In March, in Boston. Do you know how cold March is in Boston?" Riley squeezed my hand but said nothing. What could she say? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and let myself feel everything I'd suppressed for 28 years. The birthdays in group homes, the Christmases watching other kids get picked up by their families, the way I'd learned to make myself small, quiet, unobtrusive because being noticed meant being moved. The ache of not belonging anywhere, to anyone. And now this woman, this mother, wanted to give me money, as if $3 million could fill the mother-shaped hole in my chest, as if wealth could replace the 1,000 tiny moments I'd missed. Someone braiding my hair, packing my lunch, cheering at my graduation, teaching me how to be a person in this world. James Rothman's office was everything I expected. Mahogany furniture, leather chairs, degrees from Harvard covering the walls. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with kind eyes that had seen too many family dramas to be shocked by anything. "Miss Clark," he greeted me, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming." "That's one word for it." I sat down, my cheap Target purse looking pathetic against the opulent surroundings. "I need you to explain how a woman who abandoned me as a baby suddenly wants to give me millions of dollars." Rothman leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Margaret came to me 5 years ago to update her will. She was quite ill at the time, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, though she survived longer than anyone expected. She wanted to ensure her estate went to you." "Why?" She didn't explain her reasoning to me in detail, but she did provide documentation of your birth and her relationship to you. Hospital records from St. Mary's, genetic markers, everything needed to establish paternity, or in this case, maternity. I felt the anger rising like bile. If she knew where I was 5 years ago, why didn't she contact me? Why wait until she was dead? Rothman's expression softened. I asked her that same question. She said she didn't deserve to know you, that she'd made her choice 28 years ago and had to live with it. The money was her way of trying to provide for you, even if she couldn't be a mother to you. How noble, I said bitterly. Salve her conscience with cash. There's more. Rothman pulled out a thick folder. Before we proceed with the DNA test and estate transfer, I need to provide you with this. Margaret left detailed instructions that you were to receive it. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my daughter, in careful cursive handwriting. Some were yellowed with age, others more recent. The dates went back years. The oldest was dated March 16th, 1997, the day after I was born. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. My darling girl, you are 1 day old today, and I have already failed you in every way a mother can fail. I held you for 3 hours after you were born, counting your fingers, memorizing your face, knowing that I would never see you again. You have your father's eyes, blue-green like the ocean. I hope you'll never know how much leaving you destroyed me. I am 17 years old. I have no money, no family, no way to care for you. Your father, the man I loved, died in a car accident 2 months before you were born. His parents blame me for their son's death. Say I trapped him with a pregnancy. They've threatened to take you from me, to raise you in a house full of hatred and judgment. I can't let that happen. I left you at the hospital because it was clean, safe, warm. Because I knew they would find you quickly and take care of you. Because I couldn't bear to hand you over to strangers while looking them in the eye. I am a coward. I am a failure. But I hope, God, I hope, that somewhere, somehow, you find a family who deserves you. I will love you every day of my life. Your mother. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I set the letter down, unable to continue, my entire worldview shifting like sand under my feet. Take the folder home, Rothman said quietly. Read them when you're ready. There's no rush on any of this. But there was a rush. I spent the next 3 days reading every letter Margaret had written. They chronicled a life of quiet suffering, working multiple jobs to support herself, never dating, never marrying, using every spare penny to build a successful career in commercial real estate. She wrote about the guilt that ate at her daily, about calling St. Mary's anonymously to check if I'd been adopted, I hadn't, about hiring a private investigator to find me when I turned 18. The later letters were full of observations about my life that made my skin crawl with the realization that she'd been watching me from afar. She knew about my graduation from community college. She knew about the graphic design award I'd won last year. She even knew about the time I'd volunteered at a youth homeless shelter, noted with pride that I was giving back despite having so little. The final letter was dated 3 weeks before her death. My darling Emma, I am dying. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month. I have lived 28 years with my choice, and not a day has passed that I haven't regretted it. But I want you to know, I need you to know, that leaving you wasn't about not wanting you. It was about loving you enough to give you a chance at a better life than I could provide. I was wrong. I know that now. I should have found a way, should have fought harder, should have been braver. Instead, I watched you grow up from the shadows, proud of the strong, talented, compassionate woman you became, knowing I had no right to that pride. The money I'm leaving you, I know it can't replace what you lost. I know it can't give you back your childhood or heal the wounds my absence created. But it's everything I have, and I want you to have it. Build the life you deserve. Create the family I failed to give you. Be happy, my darling girl. Be so, so happy. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Your mother, Margaret. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by 28 years of letters from a ghost, and sobbed until I had nothing left. The anger was still there, but it was complicated now by grief for the mother I'd never known and the grandmother my future children would never meet, by rage at a world that makes 17-year-old girls feel they have no choice but to abandon their babies, by the crushing weight of wasted time and wasted love. Riley found me there hours later, still clutching the final letter. "What are you going to do?" she asked, sitting beside me. "I don't know," I whispered. "How do I forgive her? How do I not forgive her?" The DNA test came back positive, as I'd known it would. The estate transfer took 3 months to finalize. And then suddenly, I was a millionaire. $3.4 million. To be exact, split between liquid assets, real estate holdings, and stocks. I was supposed to feel vindicated, justified, compensated. Instead, I felt hollow. But then I started going through Margaret's personal effects, which Rothman had also preserved for me. Her apartment had been kept exactly as she'd left it, per instructions in her will, waiting for me to claim it. It was in the South End, a beautiful two-bedroom with crown molding and hardwood floors, worth at least $1 million on its own. The living room was a shrine to me. Photographs covered the walls, hundreds of them taken from a distance. Me at 7, missing my front teeth, coming out of school. Me at 13, awkward and angry, at a bus stop. Me at 22, laughing with Riley at a coffee shop. My entire life, documented by a ghost. On the mantel was a single-frame photo of a young woman, 17 maybe, with dark hair and those blue-green eyes I saw in my own mirror every day. She was holding a newborn baby, her face a mixture of love and devastating sorrow. Me and Margaret, the only photo we'd ever have together. I found her journals in a locked drawer, the key left for me with specific instructions from Rothman. They filled in the gaps the letters had left. The violence of the car accident that killed my father, Michael. The viciousness of his wealthy parents, the Ashfords, who'd threatened to destroy Margaret if she kept the baby. The terror of being alone and broke at 17 with no safety net. And I found something else. Evidence that Margaret had tried to change her mind. Letters she'd written to family services, begging for information about me, asking if she could get me back. Denied because she'd voluntarily relinquished me, because by the time she got her life together, I was already in the system, and they told her disrupting my placement would be traumatic. The system had trapped us both, but there was one more discovery that changed everything. In a safety deposit box, I found documents showing that Margaret had set up a trust for me when I was 6 months old. Not millions, she didn't have that then, but a modest account that grew over the years, meant to give me a start when I turned 18. The trust administrator was supposed to contact me when I aged out of foster care. They never did. An administrative error, they claimed when I called. Furious. The paperwork had been misfiled. The money had sat untouched for a decade, growing with interest while I'd worked 3 jobs to afford community college. I could have had help. All those years, I could have had help, and someone's incompetence had stolen that from me. That's when the anger clarified into something else. Purpose. I hired a team of attorneys, the best that money could buy, and went after everyone who had failed us. The trust company that had misfiled my paperwork. The family services agency that had denied Margaret's attempts to reconnect with me. The Ashford family, whose threats had forced a terrified 17-year-old to give up her child. The lawsuits took 2 years. The trust company settled quickly, not wanting the publicity of their negligence. The settlement was modest, another $500,000, which I immediately donated to organizations supporting foster youth. The family services case was harder. Government agencies are difficult to sue, protected by layers of bureaucracy and immunity. But my attorneys found patterns, dozens of similar cases where parental rights were terminated prematurely, where reunification wasn't properly pursued, where vulnerable families fell through systemic cracks. We filed a class action lawsuit. It's still ongoing, but it's forcing changes to how the state handles these cases. The Ashfords were the hardest and honestly the most satisfying. Michael's parents, my paternal grandparents, though they'd never acknowledge it, were wealthy, connected, and arrogant. They'd threatened a teenager to protect their family's reputation, and it had cost me a mother. I couldn't sue them for decisions made 28 years ago. The statute of limitations had long since passed, but I could do something else. I found Michael's younger brother, Thomas, who'd left the family years ago, disgusted by his parents' treatment of Margaret. With his help, I pieced together the full story, how Margaret and Michael had been deeply in love, planning to raise me together despite being young, how the Ashfords had blamed Margaret for the accident, even though Michael had been the one driving, how they'd systematically destroyed Margaret's reputation, cut off her support system, and made it clear they'd make her life hell if she kept me. Thomas helped me write an exposé. We published it in the Boston Globe, complete with documentation. The threatening letters the Ashfords had sent Margaret. The evidence of their campaign against a grieving teenage mother. Everything. The wealthy, respectable Ashford family, revealed as the kind of people who'd rather destroy a young woman's life than acknowledge an inconvenient grandchild. The social fallout was spectacular. They were removed from charity boards. Country club memberships were reevaluated. Their real estate business suffered as clients quietly moved their accounts elsewhere. Boston society, for all its flaws, doesn't forgive child abandonment, especially when it's couched in classism and cruelty. Eleanor Ashford, my paternal grandmother, tried to reach out to me afterward through attorneys. She wanted to meet me, she claimed, to make amends and build a relationship. I declined through my attorney with a message I'd carefully crafted. You had 28 years to acknowledge my existence. You chose your reputation over your son's child. I'm choosing my peace over your guilty conscience. We have nothing to say to each other. It wasn't exactly revenge. Revenge would have required me to take pleasure in their downfall, and I didn't. I felt nothing when I read about their social exile, heard about the business struggles. They were simply consequences, karma working itself out in real time. The real change happened in how I chose to use Margaret's gift. I established the Margaret Ashford Foundation, a nonprofit supporting pregnant and parenting teens. We provide housing, childcare, educational support, job training, everything Margaret didn't have when she needed it. We work to keep families together, to give young parents a real choice instead of forcing them into impossible decisions. I bought a house in Jamaica Plain with room enough for the family I hope to build someday. Not Margaret's apartment, that felt too haunted, but a place that's wholly mine. I quit freelancing and went back to school, earning a degree in social work. I wanted to understand the system that had failed us both, to help fix it from the inside. And every year on March 15th, my birthday, I visit Margaret's grave in Forest Hills Cemetery. I bring flowers, yellow roses, her favorite, according to her journals, and I talk to her. I tell her about the foundation, about the families we've helped stay together, about the life I'm building with the gifts she left me. I don't know if I've forgiven her. Forgiveness feels too simple for something this complicated. She made a choice in impossible circumstances, one that caused me profound pain, and she spent the rest of her life trying to atone for it. Was it enough? I don't know. How do you measure enough when it comes to a childhood lost? But I found something more valuable than forgiveness: understanding. Margaret was a child herself when she had me, terrified and alone, trying to do the right thing in a world that gave her no good options. She loved me the only way she knew how, from a distance, making sure I'd be provided for even if she couldn't be there herself. The money, the $3.4 million estate that started this whole journey, turned out to be the least important part of her gift. The letters, the journals, the documented proof that I was loved, wanted, grieved for every day of her life. That was what I'd been missing. Not the material wealth, but the knowledge that I mattered to someone, that my existence in the world wasn't an accident or a burden, but a tragedy of circumstances that broke a young woman's heart. Last month, I helped a 16-year-old named Sophia keep her baby daughter. She came to the foundation scared, broke, and alone, being pressured by her family to do the responsible thing and give up her child. We found her housing, got her enrolled in online school, connected her with childcare so she could finish her education. Yesterday, she sent me a photo, Sophia and her daughter, Daniela, both smiling, thriving. The caption said, "Thank you for giving me a choice." I started crying right there in my office, and I couldn't stop, because that's what Margaret gave me in the end. Not revenge on the people who wronged us. That was just noise, just settling scores. What she really gave me was the power to make sure no other mother and child are forced apart by poverty, fear, and a system that fails vulnerable families. That's karma too, I think. Not the vengeful kind that destroys your enemies, but the kind that transforms pain into purpose, loss into legacy. I'll never have Margaret. I'll never get back those 28 years we lost, but I have her story, her love, and her resources to make sure other families don't face the same impossible choice she did. And somehow, miraculously, that's enough. The Ashfords lost their reputation and their standing. The negligent trust company paid for their mistakes. The family services system is slowly, painfully changing, but the real victory isn't in their downfall. It's in Sophia and Daniela, together. It's in the 15 other families we've kept intact this year. It's in the life I'm building that honors Margaret's sacrifice without being defined by it. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying those who wronged you. Sometimes it's about building something so beautiful, so meaningful, that their cruelty becomes a footnote in a much larger story of survival, resilience, and love. I'm Emma Clark. I was abandoned as a baby, inherited millions from the mother who left me, and discovered that the greatest revenge is a life well lived in service of others. And I'm just getting started.